freaking first cut. Golly. Hello, YouTube. We are going to DFS preview this week's Houston Open. We're going to go through the golf course. We're going to go through the field, and we'll even have a little fun at the end of the show. Hit the like button. Make sure you're subscribed. We'll jump into it right now. Welcome to the First Cut Podcast. I'm Rick Gehman. That right there, Sia Nejad. Sia, third time's a charm. This is our third attempt at doing the DFS preview for the Houston Open, and I believe we have finally got it figured out.
Yeah, it's all Greg's fault. That's the reason we're late. That's my story. And you mentioned earlier, you said the word the field. So it's going to be a comeback story for me with golf, because I had Justin Fields in like every NFL DFS lineup this week. The problem was I literally had zero Joe Mixon. So I made money, but I could have won all the money on DraftKings if I just had Joe Mixon with Justin Fields. And since I didn't make all the money, I got to make it all in golf this week at the Houston Open. So hopefully we can help each other do that.
Okay, we can do that. No Greg this week. We'll catch up with him further down the road. You know, it's okay. It's okay to get a week off every now and then. But the PGA Tour does not have the week off. They roll on to Houston, the penultimate event of the fall portion of the schedule. Producer Troy, if you could share my screen, that'd be splendid. Thank you very much. We're going to Memorial Park. And Sia, this is, first off, a muni. You can play this course. It's public. Go have at it. They've got like 50 or 60,000 rounds a year. You can play where the tour guys are going to play this week.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I assume that's going to, lead everybody to more information about the course. We don't have much by way of information just because we don't have a ton of history, but that's kind of cool. Interestingly enough, though, it's going to be a tough challenge, which I think might be sort of the opposite expectation.
Yeah, Memorial Park kind of got lapped, right? I mean, they used to go here a lot, but like 50 years ago. And then just recently, 2019 is when Tom Doak came in actually with the assistance or the player's perspective of Brooks Koepka. And they redid this golf course and got it back up to like PGA Tour difficulty and length and standards and all that fun stuff. So we've got 3 years, Sia. And with the way that the scheduling has changed, it's bizarre, but it's basically 2019, 2021, 2022 seasons, I believe, is what it is. So don't be confused by that. This is now the 2023 season, which will be the fourth time we go to Memorial Park. So as you mentioned, 3 years. It plays rather difficult. We'll have to do the best with those three cracks at it.
That's right. And we kind of know what the course is for the most part. I mean, at least I think we do. I mean, we know we have it's an interesting setup with 3 par 5s. We got 5 par 3s, a lot of long par 4s. I think this setup sort of lends itself to, we have this up here on YouTube in terms of the length of each hole. It certainly lends itself to the bomber narrative. And I'm totally okay with that, for the record. I don't think you have to be a bomber on this course, but I think getting it out there is definitely going to help. I think the short game is going to be of major import to me, not just the putting, not just Bermuda putting, but also around the green gameplay. So that's, I guess that's one way of saying you got to have the complete game here, but I'm definitely going to have a primary focus on that short game collectively, the around the green and the putting.
Yeah, the 5 par 3s, and they're all different lengths, which is great. That's kind of the true test here. 155 yards at shortest, 237 at the longest. The par 5s are some of the toughest par 5s that you get on the PGA Tour schedule, and at a par 70, just a hair over 7,400 yards. Only Southern Hills was longer last season, and Southern Hills was obviously the PGA Championship. So this is going to be stout. You mentioned the around the green play. Tom Doak came in here and they removed a lot of bunkers, Sia, and now it's a lot of these short grass areas around the greens, and that is way more challenging than just bunkers being everywhere, because pros are professionals out of bunkers.
That's right. So it makes it more challenging, because we know that you said it, pros are professionals out of bunkers, like that, meaning, of course, that it's easier for them to be in the bunker than to be in the short grass. And so I think you really have to kind of hone in on who's comfortable around the green, because they're going to be in positions around the green that are going to be more compromising. So that's why, again, it's going to be more of an emphasis for me today.
Yeah,
this week.
Here's what we're looking at on my website, rickrungood.com, the course key stats model. So this is not just the eye test as well. The data backs this up. In the 3 years that we've played Memorial Park, strokes gained around the green ranks 6th, and strokes gained putting ranks 2nd, which means there's only 5 other courses in which strokes gained around the green was more correlated to success. And there's only 1 other course in which strokes gained putting has been more correlated to success. It's only 3 years, but that's pretty interesting. And it's important. It's important because I think I love it, Sia, when both the data and the eye test align.
That's right. And so I think we have, so, I mean, I guess my question for you, Rick, is, okay, we know that. We know that short game is going to come into play here. Maybe we should have a little bit more of an emphasis on sort of the around the green and the putter. But are you going to be emphasizing distance in any real way? Are you going to be emphasizing certain approach proximities, which I know you don't typically love to talk about in terms of segregating buckets, but I'm just curious where you're at on that.
Yeah, probably not on the buckets because Tom Doak does such a good job of kind of giving us a bunch of different ways to do this and a bunch of different buckets. I don't think there's any 1 or 2 that I would be particularly interested in. Distance is always an advantage. However, accuracy, playing out of the short grass, playing out of the fairway here it's nice because it's this really kind of sticky Bermuda grass. It's going to start the week at 2.5 inches thick, which does not sound very long, but basically compared to other fall golf courses, that's like some of the longest that we get, and it'll grow out as the week goes on. So I think if I could really choose, playing out of the fairway, I think it's a little bit more important than distance, but distance is it doesn't matter what golf course, it doesn't matter where in the world, distance is always a benefit.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I'm with that. I might actually put a little bit more emphasis on distance, but I mean, you can't have it all, right? I can't have a bomber who's good on approach, who's excellent around the green and putting. So while my emphasis will be a little bit more on the short game relative to some of these other tournaments, to the extent I can emphasize something else, I think distance will sort of be third place in those types of metrics.
Okay, well, let's start talking about some names. We are going to jump into the cheat sheet and go tier by tier, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. Here is the cheat sheet. 5 golfers over $10,000. Scotty Scheffler, 11.5. Sam Burns, 10.7. Tony Finau, 10.4. Hideki Matsuyama, 10.3. And Russell Henley, a flat $10,000. So, Sia, where would you like to allocate your big bucks here at the top of the board?
I hate when this happens, but it's the top 3. You know, I don't know what to say. Like, Hideki is just too much of an unknown. He's been too bad for too long. And let's have some perspective. I'm obviously relating that to the top 5 that you just mentioned. I don't think I'm going to get to Henley. A shout out to Greg Ducharme, who, of course, we cannot play Henley after last week because nobody wins back to back. So I obviously have to be off Henley. But in all seriousness, I don't think I'd be on Henley here anyway. I mean, the finishing positions are certainly strong, but it's Scotty, Sam, and Tony for me. If I have to distinguish 2 of those 3, it's probably going to be, it's probably going to be Scheffler and Sam Burns, and I'll probably leave Tony Finau out. They all rate out just super well. I love what we saw from Scotty this weekend, particularly on Sunday. We know how he can flash, and it looks like the putter, might be rebounding from just basically a disaster for the entire summer. And we see that here. I mean, we don't have strokes gained metrics from the Mayakoba, but I'm safe to say he was pretty awesome with the putter, right, Rick?
Yeah, I mean, he shot the rounds of the day by a couple shots on Sunday. I believe it was a 62. The highlights that we saw, he was rolling everything in. Now, I will note, he's gone through a putter change recently, at least for Sunday and at least for Saturday. He was back to his trusty blade putter that he used to win those 4 tournaments last year. So maybe he just needed to put that in a little bit of a timeout, right? Show it that, hey, I can go use a Scotty Cameron prototype. I can use something else, but he is back to that faithful blade that we saw him do so well with all year long.
Yeah, and if that's come around, obviously we know the upside. I mean, he's elite as far as this tournament goes. There's probably like 2 or 3 guys that maybe 1 or 2 that are possibly in the conversation with Scotty. But I do want to talk about Sam Burns a little bit. If you pull him up here, the approach plays has been pretty bad. But we know distance isn't a problem. If you want to emphasize that, he's been coming around off the tee, as we can see here. He's great on Bermuda, so that's good. He needs the approach game to rebound. But when it comes to these like prolific guys, I kind of will give somebody a pass if they've been bad in one particular area for a short period of time. If you look at his 24 round split, it's bad. Like his approach is like terrible relative to the field. Like he's in the bottom half of this field. But if you go back 50 rounds, it's like, oh yeah, that's the Sam Burns I know and love. So I think I'm willing to give guys like Sam Burns a pass, knowing how hot he can get, knowing he can get very hot with the putter as well. So Sam Burns and Scotty. And then I'm not worried about the miscut from Tony last week, but I think he's got to be on the outside looking in.
Well, this stat profile from Sam Burns, it reminds me a lot of the Russell Henley stat profile.
Yeah.
Right. This is where you've got to give at least some of the higher end guys, you give them a little more credit for their 100 round baseline or their 200 round baseline or whatever you want to call it, because you know it's there, right? And you know that some of these elite guys can just pop off, have a good week, and win the golf tournament. That's what Russell Henley essentially did last week, and Sam Burns is kind of setting up in a similar stat profile. The Tony Finau thing is kind of interesting. I don't know how closely you were tracking this, Sia. Obviously, you know, the Mayakoba Championship in November or ends of October doesn't draw a ton of eyeballs, but this was a bizarre missed cut. You know, he what I believe posted a -5 under par. And then I guess when he came in and signed his card, we got the real card and it dropped into -3 and he misses the cut on the number. And first of all, that's like a shock to the system. Because,
Yes.
you know, we had thought he had played much better than that. We thought he was safe, all that. But the big thing here is he had 4 penalty strokes in those 2 rounds. And I kind of look at that and just say, man, he's not going to find 4 penalties over the first 2 rounds this week. That is generally an outlier. And he still just missed the cut on the number. I'm okay going back to Tony Finau here.
Yeah, I'm okay going back to him too. I mean, if you wanted to make an argument against him relative to the 2 guys we already discussed, Sam Burns and Scotty Scheffler, and it's such a small sample size, but Scotty's 2nd, 32nd, Sam Burns 7th, and miscut 24th for Finau. Now, granted, he's been really, really good, you know, after that. You know, in other words, Finau's been really good just in this last year as a whole. But again, you know, I wonder when it comes to ownership, to me, it's Scotty and then it's Tony. And I might be wrong, but that's how I see this. And I see Sam Burns, especially for those that are looking at models and they're looking at like the last 24 or even 36 rounds, Sam Burns is not going to flash as much. And when you look at his recent approach play, he's obviously not going to flash as much. So I think it's those top 2. I shouldn't say that. I think it's Tony Finau and Scotty. They're going to get a lot of popularity. Then it's going to be Sam Burns. And then you're bringing up Hideki here. Then I think it's like Hideki and Henley. People are going to take shots there, but I have a feeling we'll get at least a slight ownership discount off of Finau onto Sam Burns.
Yeah, I think that I'm happy to go back to Tony. I think obviously kind of in a vacuum, Scotty Scheffler seems like the play here, but I think the 10K, my decisions will likely be dictated by ownership, right? If for some reason, if Sam Burns comes in at half the ownership of Scotty Scheffler, like, okay, cool. I'll roll with Sam Burns. No problem there. Or if Tony Finau, if people don't like the way he missed the cut, like I'll just go there. So I'm probably going to let ownership dictate a lot of my decisions here at the top.
Totally agree with that. 100%.
The $9,000 range. Fascinating stuff here. Aaron Wise, Taylor Montgomery, Jason Day. Then we rounded out with Mav McNeely, Sahith Tagala, Denny McCarthy, Emiliano Grillo, and Joel Damon. You can make a case for a lot of these guys here. A lot of them have pretty decent history around Memorial Park. What are the better options here?
There's 2 guys that I like a lot. There's a 3rd guy I will consider, but I have a feeling I won't actually get to him because he'll just be popular enough for me to, well, actually, I could be wrong about that. Let me just get to the 2 guys that I like a lot. One's not going to surprise anybody, and he might just end up being really popular. It's Aaron Wise at 9,900. A lot of people like to play Aaron Wise, Rick, and I think that's partly your fault and influence because I know you're an Aaron Wise guy, so we all want to be Aaron Wise guys. But with that said, I mean, this does seem like a breakthrough moment for him. I'm just kind of being predictive, right? I'm trying to foreshadow. This does feel like a course where Aaron Wise could win. And there's only so many people above him that he has to beat out. And the guys below him are, you know, his caliber or worse. And he just seems like such a good fit. He's got the distance component. Really everything grades out well. Approach, off the tee, long iron play, if you want to look at that. The longer par 3s, you know, he's doing the putting's coming around. I just think, and by the way, the finishing positions are really good. He's made the cut in 8 tournaments in a row, which isn't a big deal for somebody this high price, but he's been top 15 or better in 2 of those. So I just think he has, in this field, he has a shot to potentially win this thing.
He's been top 15 or better in 5 of those. Do not.
Oh, excuse me. Did I say 2?
Do not knock Aaron Wise. 5 of 8 top 15 finishes, 2 in a row.
Yeah.
And you're right. He tends to play better on more difficult golf courses. So his strokes gained on hard golf courses is about 3/4 of a shot per round. It's 6th best in this field. I mean, and it makes sense, right? Generally, the harder the golf course, the better test it is. And the guys that are better from tee to green can kind of separate themselves a little bit. And then for years, that's been Aaron Wise. And then he's just added in the putter as well. So, I mean, it makes complete sense that this is going to be a pretty prime spot for him. So if it's not Wise, then who is it?
Well, so I'm worried that I'm going to be on a couple popular guys here in this 9K range, but Jason Day's the other guy.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, the game, we're starting to witness the old Jason Day. When I say old Jason Day, I mean like old Jason Day, like 3, 4, 5 years ago, Jason Day. Everything's coming back. First of all, he's got a lot more length off the tee from what I've noticed. And the off the tee numbers are great. The approach numbers are great. Around the green, a little sketchy. The putter's been, hit or miss. But again, with the short game, that's going to be, especially with the putter, that's going to be hit or miss regardless. He's also good on Bermuda, so that's going to help from a putting standpoint. I just think Jason Day is another guy that's primed to sort of put his name back on the map, or his face back on the map, and this could be the tournament to do it. So those are my 2 favorite guys. The third guy, by the way, is Emiliano Grillo, because I think he checks out very well for this course. I'm not super impressed with his finishing positions as of late, though.
I will tell you what, a lot of people probably do not realize that Jason Day finished T21 last week, because he was quite popular. I mean, I was very excited to play Jason Day last week. He shot a 73 on Thursday, which was 2 over. That probably should have been it, right? When you're 2 over on Thursday at Mayakoba, I think a lot of people stopped tracking Jason Day. Shot a 64 on Friday, made the cut, and then went 67, 66 on the weekend. So that's 130 plus 69, 197 over the final 3 rounds, 16 under par by my quick napkin math. Yeah, that's like, he didn't play. If he didn't play himself out of it on Thursday, we might be talking about Jason Day inside the top 10, top 5, maybe making a run at this thing. Russell Henley gave himself enough distance, but yeah, I think a lot of people are not going to realize that Jason Day actually finished inside the top 25 last week.
And I'm wondering if people have come around on Jason Day enough to sort of pluck him out of this lineup, because we have guys, even if you want to go up to like Russell Henley at 10K, Taylor Montgomery has been red hot. Mav McNeely is an interesting name. Sahith Theegala is an interesting name. Denny McCarthy. So I just wonder, as much as I think I'm kind of late to the Jason Day party, I wonder if everybody's going to be late to the Jason Day party because of where he has been grouped, the people he has been grouped with.
There are some really fascinating names here. Like Maverick McNeely and Taylor Montgomery are way over their heads with the putter, like way over their heads.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I kind of want a putter here. So can I just get like one more week from those guys? I actually think the more interesting guy is Denny McCarthy, especially considering what his ownership might be compared to a Maverick McNeely, compared to a Taylor Montgomery, because this guy actually is the best putter in the world. And he has been doing it for 8 or 10 weeks. He's been doing it for like 3 or 4 years. So if you want a putter who is not significantly over their head, Denny McCarthy seems to be that guy. Coming off a T6 at the Bermuda Championship, actually hasn't even putted well in his last 2 measure starts. I assume he putted well in Bermuda because he finished inside the top 10 there, but interested to see kind of what the industry does with those 3 guys, McNeely, Montgomery, McCarthy. That's hard to say. And also Denny, in his 3 trips to Memorial Park, has a 9th and an 11th. So that's the guy I'm focusing in on.
Yeah, it's a good point. And now that we discussed this 9K range, I feel like we're at a place where it's going to be flat. In other words, we can just kind of go ahead and take the guy or 2 guys that we like, because other than Joel Dahmen, people aren't going to play him and even Grillo, they're not going to play him as much as Denny, as much as Jason Day, as much as Taylor Montgomery, maybe even Mav as well. So I think like those types of guys are maybe on the outside looking in from an ownership standpoint, but I don't know that I want to pivot there. I think Taylor Montgomery, well, certainly Aaron Wise, Jason Day, Denny, I think they're going to be relatively popular, but not too popular. So as much as I want to fade ownership, I'm not sure I fade it in this specific range, unless we have something like Aaron Wise is just, out of control ownership, I'm happy to pivot to somebody else. But to your question or your point about Denny, that you're right. That might be the guy. I mean, I loved what we just pulled up on YouTube, the around the green game too. Like we think of him as just a great putter, but like everything is checking out with him. Off the tee, approach, around the green is excellent. And then of course the putter and the finishing positions. It would be so golf for him to finish in last place, but he checks basically all the boxes.
Yeah, over the last 50 rounds, he is the Taylor Montgomery's an outlier, but Taylor Montgomery doesn't have 50 measured rounds, so a little bit of a smaller sample size. In this range, he is the best short game player. He's basically the best putter. He's the best around the green, and he's got 2 really good results here in 3 years. Like I think it makes perfect sense. The $8,000 range, for as fun and exciting and well-rounded as the 9s are, the 8s I have a lot more questions about. We are going to get to those guys and the rest of the value, but first we're going to take a quick break and hear a word from our partners. And we're back. $8,000 range, Sia. So all the guys in the 9K have got course history, good results, all that fun stuff. There is not a top 25 for any golfer at Memorial Park in the 8K range. The best finish of anybody was 3 years ago. Sebastian Munoz finished 28th at Memorial Park. That's it.
It's not great. I'm looking at the history, and like Matthew Naismith is a guy I really like. There's like 4 names I'll give out here. And, this isn't great for Matthew Naismith, 46th, 100th. Well, I shouldn't say 46th, miscut. But I like guys in this range because a lot of these guys have really improved, particularly over the last year or two. And Matthew Naismith is one of those guys, for the record. To me, first of all, it's a little striking to see Matthew Naismith at 8,900 in any tournament. So like that's sort of where I'm like, I'm not so sure about that, which is why if he's even remotely popular, I am super happy to pivot. My hope is that because he's 8,900, people are like, yeah, I'm just not paying that for Matthew Naismith. So they move somewhere else. But he does, to me, check every box. As we see here, the approach game has been on fire, off the tee, on fire. He's gaining with the putter in obscene ways. I mean, it's 5 in a row now coming off a bad stretch. And, the around the green game could be better. That could end up kind of hurting him to some degree. But I do like him unless he's popular. A few other names I like. Taylor Pendrith, I feel like can potentially get into trouble with some short game issues. But if he doesn't, if he just stays hot, he's a guy in the 8K range that I think can win the tournament. Again, when you look at the putter, the around the green game, it's not bad. But the putter has been pretty bad. So that's like a big watch out for me. Taylor Pendrith is kind of more of a showdown guy, or maybe a first round leader play, hint. If he's in the right sort of wave, morning, afternoon. But I do like him. He can bomb it, obviously, a monster with the ball striking. Davis Riley, I like a lot. I'll note that Bermuda is his best surface. Off the tee, he's been a little sketchy, but approach game has been solid. I'll give you one other name all the way down to 8,000, and it's Taylor Moore, who these are like, I don't know if anybody else would call him, like, to me, he's like a short game specialist. He happens to be really good with the long irons as well. Off the tee is kind of a weakness for him, but I'm not super concerned about that. But I like Taylor Moore. I like his price quite a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Neesmith, the 3 straight top 10s. Now he's had a couple of weeks off, so you always worry like, oh, has he kind of lost that form? But I think certainly worth considering if you want to look at the Bermuda putting numbers. So of the guys that have a large enough sample size, Denny McCarthy's number 1, no surprise. Sam Burns, number 2. That shouldn't be much of a surprise. The guy who's growing on me in the 8K range is 3rd here, and it's Andrew Putnam. So he's a big loser off the tee, but that is absolutely just because he is short off the tee. He's very short off the tee. He's very, very accurate. It's the only place in which he loses. He's a small positive on approach, and then his short game is magnificent. You look at the run he's been on, Sia. He hasn't missed a cut since the Barracuda. That was in July. He's got a couple of top 5 finishes in there. Most recently at the Zozo Championship, he finished runner up. This is like, I can just feel myself growing on Andrew Putnam as the week goes on.
I think it's a really smart play too, because I think people will lean toward the heavier hitters, if you will, the longer hitters. And to me, that means Andrew Putnam's he's just not one of those guys that gets popularity. I don't know. You could probably check that right now, right? In terms of his highest ownership. I think it's going to be more of the same here.
Mayakoba, 12% is the highest he has ever been. Yes. Since I've been tracking this. So he lives in that single digit ownership range.
Yeah, I think Andrew Putnam's a really smart play. I do want to mention that this is not a guy I'm recommending for those of you that track those things. Keith Mitchell was interesting to me right off the bat, but then he seemed almost like a little trappish to me because of the short game issues. He's another guy that I would probably prefer in like a showdown or a first round leader scenario rather than just over 4 rounds.
Yeah, he's been really struggling both on and around the greens. The ball striking, the driver's been fine. The second shot has been a little bit erratic. This is not a great stat profile for Keith Mitchell. We've seen him play much better for a long time. For the last couple of years, this is a pretty bad spot for him. Not that he can't break out, but it's not a great look.
Certainly no signs of breaking out.
Who else? Taylor Pendrith is interesting. We've also just not seen a lot of Taylor Pendrith, right? He missed 4 months last year with the fractured rib. He's a great driver of the ball. If he's a 0 around the green, I'm willing to take my chances with the putter because sometimes he loses 4 and sometimes he gains 4. But he needs to be a 0 around the greens. And I don't know what the likelihood of that is, but I'm excited just for the next 12 months of Taylor Pendrith.
Yeah. And I think it's worth playing him because I think, sometimes when we talk about guys being a 0 around the green, like sometimes we're talking about elite players like Colin Morikawa or something, but sometimes we're talking about guys who actually don't have winning equity, like guys in the 7K range or that just, they're not going to win the tournament. I actually think, especially in this field, not that it's a horrible field, but I do think Taylor Pendrith has the ability to contend in this field. So he's a guy that if he does have a 0 putter, like you could actually see him on Sunday afternoon down the stretch of a tournament. So that's why I'm going to be more willing to play him rather than maybe a guy who's a terrible putter down the board.
I know he had 0 points at the President's Cup, but maybe we can get some of those like good President's Cup vibes that basically everybody else got after they left Quail Hollow. The $7,000 range. Here's where it gets massive, right? And we can find basically anything we want here. So let's start with a name or two. Wyndham Clark is the top, and the bottom of the 7K range is a handful of guys like Kevin Streelman, Russell Knox, Trey Mullinax. So let's start with a guy or two here.
Okay, let's start with, I'll give you 2 names right off the bat. Patrick Rodgers, a longer hitter, as we know. He's kind of reined it in with the approach game, and the finishing positions have been pretty good for Patrick Rodgers as of late. Now, T27, T3, T16, T28, T54, that's his last 5. So I feel like even though a lot of these aren't measured events, I feel like he is kind of finding something. And I think he's a pretty good course fit. The next name I'll give you is Lee Hodges. Rates out really well for me. Tee to green, off the tee, the long par 3s, long iron play, approach, greens and regulation, literally like rates out really, really well, pretty much across the board. He can find a hot putter. He can be pretty good around the green. I think there's pretty good value there for Lee Hodges at 7,600.
Hodges and Neesmith, we could put together a Vineyard Vines team here shortly. They all wear that huge whale on their chest. Okay, how about friend of the pod, Sepp Straka? Now, it hasn't been as good recently, but he won the Honda this year, which is PGA National, historically one of the harder courses that we get on the PGA Tour schedule. Almost won in Memphis, a playoff event. Almost won at Sanderson Farms. That was this season. And you look at what he has done here, Sia, and of anybody who's got double-digit rounds in the Tom Doak era, the Memorial Park era, nobody's been better than Sepp Straka. Now, it includes a missed cut, but T4, T5 missed cut. You talk about guys not having win equity. I think Sepp Straka has more than his peers in this range.
Totally agree. Sepp Straka was one of 3 more names I was going to give you. Obviously, the around the green game can be an issue. It hasn't really been an issue for him here. And we know he's been okay around the green before. So again, in this 7K range, I mean, you're not going to find the perfect candidate. So at least find a candidate that has some win equity or some top 5 equity. And Sepp Straka has not only done it here, but he's done it in the last 12 months as well.
What were the other names that you had?
Yeah, so this is random. Davis Thompson, I think, is interesting. I don't think anybody's going to play Davis Thompson. 3 made cuts in a row since coming over from some Korn Ferry Tour competition. 2 of those 3 that he's been on, as we can see here, that he's been on the PGA Tour for, great finishing positions.
This is way better than I was anticipating.
Right. And I mean, like what doesn't check out here other than we don't have a huge sample size, but even if you go back to the Corn Ferry Tour stuff, I mean, he's popped. I mean, there's a win there, there's a T5, there's a T6, there's another T6. Yeah, there's a bunch of cuts there too, but again, what are we looking for in this tournament? We're looking for ups, well, in any golf DFS really. In tournaments, we're looking for upside. And I think Davis Thompson is one of those names where people haven't really come around to him yet. And yeah, he could crash it and burn your lineup, but that's why he's the price he is. He could also finish top 15.
Basically 13 strokes gained in the ball striking categories in 12 rounds this season. He's a plus around the green player, and he's volatile with the putter. He's been he lost 3.5 in Jackson. He gained 3.5 in Napa. This is, I was genuinely not surprised, not expecting to see this. That's pretty darn good.
It's pretty great. And the other guy, this is a guy I've been on for a while now, and he happens to be good around the green as well, which certainly helps. Approach and tee to green numbers inside the top 20. Steven Yeager. He's 7,100, and this is one of those guys that I think is coming on that I think maybe in, I don't know, a year or so, we could find him with a similar field instead of at 7,100, maybe 8,200, maybe 8,300, a guy that's consistently competing. The metrics aren't really jumping out at me, but yeah, again, that short game is going to be really important here, and that's where he is a prime candidate to succeed.
Yeah, he is splendid on and around the greens. The miscut in Bermuda was his first miscut since the 3M Open. I don't know. I could give a lot of guys a pass for missing a cut in Bermuda with the winds and the things that they had going on there. The only other one that I would probably want to point out here is Grayson Sigg at 7,400. So his season has started really well. He had the 9th place finish in Jackson. He had the 11th in Bermuda, and then he was inside the top 10 Sia for 3 rounds last week. He was like T9 going into the final round. I forget what he shot, but he dropped 35 spots on the leaderboard on Sunday. That's like the reverse Jason Day, right? Both Jason Day and Grayson Sigg gave us 3 really, really good rounds last week, and I don't think they should necessarily be penalized for the one bad round that they had.
Totally agree. I'm a Grayson Sigg guy. I don't mind that play at all. Grayson Sigg is certainly kind of on my list there. As we look in that low 7K range, what do you think about Robbie Shelton this week?
What we know of Robbie Shelton is that he's fairly stout on and around the greens. And I was a backer of his for that 23rd place finish, which was Bermuda, where, I mean, through 2 rounds, he was like winning the golf tournament. So it was actually a disappointing 23rd, but that's neither here nor there. I'm happy to invest in Robbie Shelton, and I'm even happy to go back to Danny Willett. Danny Willett gains his strokes via the short game categories, and he's been doing it well enough. He is not a consistent guy. If you're looking for consistency, Danny Willett's not your guy. But just recently, he's got the T21 last week in Mexico. He made, I was going to say he made the cut. He finished T40 at the CJ Cup. It's a no cut event. Finished runner up at the Fortinet that he should have won, right? That's the one Max Homa stole from him. And he 3 putts on the 72nd hole. I mean, he's been playing fairly good golf around the world for the better part of, I don't know, at least 4 months.
Agree. I actually think Willett is a super sneaky play. I think him and guys like Putnam are definitely going to make your lineup, anybody's lineup, quite different. And I Willett, a course like this where you need to be savvy around the green, like a guy like Danny Willett could really kind of own that. As we see, was that his history here that you just?
It was both. It was his history. I did Honda because I wanted to see how he played on difficult golf course. I thought he had a good result at Honda. He does not. T48 and a miscut. So I had Honda up and I had Houston up. It's not pretty for either one of them.
And Houston, his history is.
So his Houston history is just miscut, withdrawal, miscut.
The only other name I'll bring up is in the 7K range. This last week was the first time I didn't play Will Gordon for a while. Like, I know he hasn't been around that long, but I had been kind of like talking about him and playing him every week that I could. And last week, for some reason, I didn't make a ton of lineups last week. I'm a little, because I wasn't on the show on Monday, and then I was a little disappointed in the tournament selection. But Gordon didn't make any of my lineups, and I was pretty disappointed in myself about that. And he just keeps churning out results, made cuts. Any thoughts on Will Gordon this week?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that he has like found the game that we thought he was going to have when he came on tour a couple of years ago. And these results that we're seeing on the PGA Tour should not be a huge surprise. The end of his Korn Ferry Tour season was awesome. Fifth win, played well in the playoffs, and then he's absolutely continued that onto the PGA Tour. So I'm very happy. I mean, he's found it. He's found his game that we were kind of waiting to see. As long as he doesn't play himself out of this around the greens, I think he gives himself a decent chance.
Yeah, he strikes me as a guy, another one of those guys, and I always kind of say this, and sometimes it bears out, and sometimes it doesn't. But he strikes me as the type of guy that we're gonna look after this tournament and be like, man, that dude could have been 8,500. Like that. That I don't want to say it's a misprice because we don't have enough information about him to say it's a misprice, but he's given us the consistency that we want. And the around the green game, like we don't have a huge sample size here, but it's just basically one bad tournament at the Fortinet where he was just pretty horrific around the green. Other than that, he's been okay.
Yeah, I mean, we could go if you go to there's a lot of events in the fall that we don't have measured events. So if you look at like his scrambling numbers, which scrambling's like kind of a flawed thing, but he's 57th in scrambling on tour, which is great. So there is some evidence that he is at least better around the greens than his 155th rank for this season show, because it's like that, like you said, that one bad result in Napa.
Right. Yeah. So I think he's certainly viable at 7,700 in my opinion.
The sixes, 6,900, Svensson, Benyon, Chesson Hadley, Nick Taylor, Ryan Palmer, Sam Ryder just withdrew, so don't play Sam Ryder. And then the min price guys, Travis Vick is back, very ugly miscut last week. Ryan Bram, Jim Harmon, who's won this event, or Jim Herman, excuse me, Jason Duffner, Cole Hammer, amongst others. I got to admit, Sia, I do not particularly like the $6,000 range. I think there's a couple of guys that I'm like throwing a dart with, but I do not see the necessarily obvious guy.
There's not an obvious guy. It depends on how you define obvious. There's a couple guys that rate out really well for me, which might just be, maybe I just have a terrible model. I don't know. But first of all, at 6,800, Ben Griffin looks to be a candidate that probably could be in the low 7K range, and we wouldn't really think too much about it. Played really well over the last 4 tournaments. Around the green game is great. Driving distance is great. Tee to green approach, not bad. Like we see here, it's, the putter's been pretty bad, but other than that, for 6,800, the big weakness is off the tee, and it appears to be a putter weakness. But then again, at the Butterfield Bermuda, T3, I'm assuming he had a pretty decent putter there. Right. Made the cut last week at the Mayakoba. This just seems like an emerging player. He's very good around the green. I don't mind it.
Yeah, another guy who's starting to figure it out. $6,800, not a bad price. $6,800 is also where Marty Dow is. Missed the cut in Mexico. I just like this kid's game. We saw it on the Korn Ferry last year. He finished 17th in Bermuda. He's going to be on the riskier side of things, but that's not bad. I will say, before I forget, Johannes Veerman, who most people are probably not aware of because he resides almost entirely on the DP World Tour. He's pretty good. So finished T11 at Mallorca, which was an event a couple of weeks ago. He is not great in any one area, Sia, but he gets the job done kind of across the board. He can have good weeks and bad weeks, but overall, he is a positive player in all 4 of the strokes gained categories over his last 100 rounds, which is not something a lot of guys in the 6K range can say.
Yeah, that's really strong. A couple other guys that I have down here. Maybe we need to pull his profile up. I might second guess myself before I even get the name out. Stuart Sink at 6,700. That was more of a like play the length of Stuart Sink type of play, and obviously like a seasoned vet. This profile doesn't seem super terrible to me, to be honest with you. The ball striking has been there largely for the last 7 or 8 tournaments. The short game can certainly be a problem, but again, we're talking about Stuart Sink at 6,700. Don't hate it. Charlie Hoffman's another guy that I don't hate at 6,800. And then as you pull up Hoffman, I do want to give out one other name at 6,400. And Hoffman's putter's been so bad.
Yeah,
I'd like to retract that from the record. That's just, I don't think you can recover from that. What about your boy though at 6,400, Michael Gligic?
I haven't looked at his stat profile in a while, so before I click it, he's like a very good cut maker. Let's see what he's been up to. I don't.
He
Yeah.
profiles well for me in the model. So in my model, at least,
He's missed 3 cuts in a row, but 2 of them were on the number, which is not always the worst thing in the world, right? And then he's got those good finishes on the Corn Ferry Tour at the end of last season. Generally more well-rounded than most of these guys. I mean, yeah, it's not bad. It's if you think there are things like good miscuts and bad miscuts, he has 2 good miscuts and 1 bad miscut in his last 3.
Yeah. Again, it's 6,400. I don't think let's be real here. Like you shouldn't really be going down to that range, but he is a name that he's 6,400 because of his recent play. It's kind of a recency bias thing where his number gets pushed down, but I don't know that he's a $6,400 golfer. So if you're trying to like pair 2 top guys and, in terms of the 10K range, and then you're trying to pull, I don't know, a 9K and a couple 7K guys, you might have to dip down to this range. And if you do, I think you can do worse than Michael Gligic.
Just kind of scrolling through and seeing if anybody else jumps out. I mean, the hardest guy that I think to figure out would be like David Lingmerth, who has back-to-back top 11 finishes, but I don't know what the evidence is like that this is going to continue. He won in August on the Corn Ferry, then he withdrew, miscut, then had those 2 top 11 finishes. We can't even see the strokes game breakdown for it, Sia. So like this is just the most fascinating golfer. I don't know if I'll actually play him. I'm just interested to see.
Can you scroll down a little bit more on Lingmerth? Because there was a stretch where I think I was playing him and he was doing pretty well, and then he crashed and burned. Okay, there it was. It must be, well, not the Advent Health, but the Wells Fargo. It's right there. It was 2021. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
It's right there where he had a stretch of some decent made cuts, and anyway, it just kind of went away. But yeah, I don't think I'm going to get there with David Lingmerth on this one.
I think the last time I was playing David Lingmerth was here, 2013.
Oh,
runner-up at the Players, T18 at the Crown Plaza, T9 at the Greenbrier, T12 at the RBC. That was probably the last time I played.
Speaking of 2013, a name I'm about to say at 6,700, he was contending in some of the smaller tournaments back in 2013 with the likes of like Robert Garrigus. Scott Piercy, I think, is an interesting play at 6,700. Has some okay history here. Didn't rate out super terribly for me in this one. Obviously, the around the green game is probably the only thing that really kind of stands out for him. But we know he's streaky. He's more of a showdown first round leader play than a full tournament play. But yeah, I thought Piercy was interesting.
Yeah, he does well at here's that 2013 same events that Lingmerth was playing well at. He was playing well
at. There you
go. Definitely does well in one round. Also, I saw him spouting off to trolls on Twitter, so he must be feeling himself. So somebody was like, "Oh, Scott Piercy, you stink." He was like, "Come play me first or something." So yeah, he must be feeling pretty confident if he's spouting off on Twitter.
Somebody asked me today at LA Fitness. I was playing basketball, but just kind of warming up, and they said a little. I want to call him a kid. I don't want to be disrespectful. He was a lot younger than me. I don't think he knew how old I was, but he's like, "Do you want to play one-on-one for $100?" And he had a videographer with him, like just very discreet videographer with him, kind of in the corner with like one of those like cameras that he's just kind of holding low to record. And I think they just wanted to do it for content reasons. But I was like, is he really trying to bet me $100?
Did you do it?
No, because the whole thing was really sketchy. I was like, first of all, if you're going to bet somebody $100 on a basketball court, somehow in that moment, like back up the fact that you have $100, because most people just don't have $100 laying around on them, like on the basketball court. But I also thought I was getting set up for something, because like some content I didn't want to be on. So I'm like, no, thanks. And he was terrible, by the way. I saw him like shooting around. The guy was like,
he was hustling.
Terrible. I would have won easily.
He was gonna lose 11-0 in the first game, and then say, okay, let's go double or nothing for 1,000.
Yes, I even said that out loud. I was like, is this like a Billy Hoyle thing? That's a movie reference you may or may not get, but some people get that movie reference.
All right, do we have the narrative lineups, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, look at these bad boys. Strokes gained narrative lineups are in. The Model Maniac. Oh, we're going with the Houston theme. Houston, we have liftoff. Is this a song? Should I know this?
I mean, I think it's just the whole like Houston, the space stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, I thought those were music notes. They were not. They're footprints. So this is the Model Maniac saying, Yuan, Smalley, Sep for Red Man, Yuan, Giant, Leap, for Hermankind.
That's actually really, really good. Of course, that would be the words of, I believe, Neil Armstrong when he landed on the moon.
Yeah, so
Allegedly.
that would be Carl Yuan, Alex Smalley, Sepp Straka, Doc Redmond, Danny Lee, Jim Herman, all in one. Wow. That might be the most efficient use of the names, right? I mean, he got 6 names in a like a 10-word phrase that we're all very familiar with.
That is and I don't say this often. I say it every like 4th or 5th show, maybe. That's a first ballot Hall of Famer right there.
That's pretty strong. So let me try that again. And I'll get all the pronunciations as accurately as I can. Yuan, Smalley, Sepp for Redmond, Yuan, Giant Leap for Hermankind. It's pretty good. Ryan, Fantasy Bunker. So he's going with large cities that aren't their state capital. Russell Knoxville. What is the state capital of Tennessee?
Great question.
Memphis?
I don't think so.
Nashville?
No.
Do you know?
No, but I know it's not either of those.
Really? It's none of those 3?
I'm actually trying
How can it not be one of those 3? What am I missing? Memphis?
I feel like
Nashville, Knoxville. How can it not be one of those? It has to be Nashville, doesn't it?
We'll go on to the next one and I'll look it up. Oh, it is Nashville. Son of a gun. I don't know. Sorry, I was so dismissive there. I think
this has to be it.
Woo. Wait, go back to the other
Okay, there we go. The next player is San Francesco Molinari, because obviously the capital of California is
Sacramento.
That's correct. Taylor Baltimore. That one's pretty easy because the capital of Maryland is.
Ooh, what is the capital of Maryland?
Annapolis? No.
Oh, it is Annapolis. That's right. Yeah. Yep.
How do I say this one? Indianapolis Haley. Paul Haley II. What is the capital of Indiana? It's not Indianapolis. That would have gotten me.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was Indianapolis. I think it is Indianapolis.
It has to be. Right?
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
In capital of Indiana. This is a quick Google search. Indianapolis. Ryan.
Come on, Ryan.
Loses a point. Jeez. Cincinnati Pan. CT Pan, Cincinnati. So the capital of Ohio is what? Cleveland? No.
It does start with a C.
Columbus?
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah,
nice job.
And this last one, I saw this one earlier. Anchor Richie Warinsky is the word, Anchorage, Alaska. I'm assuming then the capital is Juneau.
That's right.
I know my state caps.
Somebody paid attention in school.
All right, next slide, please. Okay, Eric says, with election day tomorrow, I present some dead presidents. James Madison Hahn, Andrew Jackson Putnam, Martin Van Buren Laird, that's a good one, Zachary Taylor Pendrith, that's strong as well, Brent Ulysses Grant, great job, Benjamin Harrison Griffin, Richie Nixon Warinsky, and a couple of bonus non-presidents, Tyson Alexander Hamilton, and Aaron Burr Rye. It's pretty good.
That's great. That's great. Wasn't the duel between Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton?
Yeah.
Pretty sure.
Yeah. John Markowski says, Houston, we have a problem. And these are specific problems, ones that John has had since turning 50. Oh, boy. Benny, ongoing neck pain from sleep. John, huh? Can you repeat that? Nick, what? Knee pain? I'm okay. Grayson, significantly tired by 9 p.m. I feel that one. MJ, more than Duffy trips to the bathroom overnight. I don't get that one. Adam,
I think he's going Defew more than Defew trips.
Oh, sorry. I was sticking to the pronunciation. Mm-hmm. Adam, I now shank every tee shot.
Preach.
Tough. Tough scene for the over 50 crowd. Thanks, John. Thanks for everybody else who sent it in. Sia, any final thoughts before we get out of here on Houston Open DFS?
Well, first of all, we had some other strokes gained narrative lineup, so please keep them coming. We've got a lot of interest in that. So if we didn't put it up, doesn't mean we didn't like it. We were kind of a little shorter on time this week because we got a late start. But no, I'm actually excited about this tournament. I'm feeling good about some of the players we talked about, and especially some of the sneaky players. I feel good about the idea of, we say this every week, but maybe getting off some of the chalk when we find out what that chalk is. Probably Wednesday night. But this feels like a good one.
Tuesday's show will be the mega preview pod. Sunday's show will be the recap and all things that have gone on in the world of golf this week. For now, producer Troy does all the hard work behind the scenes. Sia Nejad available on Twitter at Sia Nejad, and you can find me at Rick Run Good. This has been The First Cut. We'll catch you next time.